Today we're going to do some notes about angles, and the nice thing about the angles notes today is that it's a good short way to end the week, and hopefully you've seen a lot of it before. So today we're going to start with some vocab, and the first vocab is complementary angles. Complementary angles are angles whose sum is 90 degrees, and so that means if you add them together, they are 90 degrees. They don't necessarily have to be touching like these guys and sharing a side, but they can be, but they are always going to equal 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are angles whose sum is 180. Same thing, they need to add up to 180, but they don't have to be sharing a common side. But there is a name for angles that do share a common side, and that is adjacent angles. And so angles are called adjacent if they share a common side. So an example of some adjacent angles that or some angles that are not adjacent would be like this. If I said this angle was 30 and this one is 60, that would be an example of angles that are not adjacent. Okay, so those are not adjacent. Those would be complementary but not adjacent. So they don't have to be sharing a side. Okay? Alrighty, so we're going to use those vocab words here, and it says angle 3 is a supplement of angle 4. And the measure of angle 4 is 47, and so we need to find the measure of angle 3. So what we know is if they're supplementary, then the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is going to be 180 degrees. And I can substitute in what I know, which is that the measure of angle 4 is 47. So I can then use this equation here, solve it, and get that the measure of angle 3 is equal to 133 degrees. Okay? We can also use complementary and that vocab to help us solve problems as well. So we have LMN and PQR, and they are complementary angles, so they're going to add up to 90 degrees. And so we need to find the angle measures when the measure of LMN is 4x minus 2 degrees and the measure of angle PQR is 9x plus 1. So I'm going to start the same way I started the previous one. And just write this statement here. So I know that if I add those two together, they're complementary, so they're going to equal 90 degrees. Then I can substitute in the angle measures that we know with the variables. I can then combine like terms. So I get 13x minus 1 equals 90. So 13x is equal to 91. So x is equal to 7. Okay, but that's not what it asks. It says to find the measures of the angles. Okay, so now I need to substitute those back in. So I'm going to give myself a little room here. And so the measure of angle LMN is equal to 4x minus 2. So I'm going to do 4 times 7 minus 2, which is going to give me 26 degrees. So the measure of angle LMN is 26 degrees. Okay, so I've answered that first one. And then I need to do the measure of angle PQR. So again, it's 9x plus 1. So I know 9 times 7 plus 1. So 63 plus 1 is 64. So we know the measure of angle PQR is 64 degrees. Okay, and you can double check that and say, oh, well, it said they're supposed to be complementary, and so does 26 plus 64 equal 90? And it does. So that means we've done this correctly and answered that question in a way that makes sense. Okay, next vocab, a linear pair. So a linear pair is two adjacent angles that are supplementary. So it's two angles that add up to 180 that are sharing a common side. So there's a number of linear pairs here. So like one example would be angle 4 and angle 6. Another would be angle 6 and angle 5 and angle 5. Sorry, my sloppiness here. Angle 3 and angle 5, and angle 3 and angle 4, all linear pairs because they're all supplementary and share a side. Okay? Vertical angles are angles that share a vertex, okay, and they're formed by the same two lines. So like they're inside those same two lines. And so angle 6 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent. So that's something else we need to remember. So angle 6 and angle 3 are congruent, as well as angle 4 and angle 5. They're congruent because they are also vertical angles. So we can use that then again to solve problems and to answer questions. Okay? So first we're going to answer some questions here and say whether we can make these conclusions or not. And then we're going to label the angles, and then I'm even going to talk through some more vocab about these angles. So first, is angle 3 a right angle? So is there anything on this diagram that tells me that it is 90 degrees? And the answer is no. There is no right angle symbol. There is no label of angle degrees. I know nothing at this point about the angle measures. And so the answer to this is no. We cannot conclude that. So I'm just going to cross it out. Okay. Angle number 1 and angle number 5 are adjacent. Okay. I can conclude that because they share a common side. This side right here is shared between angle 1 and angle 5, and so they are adjacent angles. So the answer to this is yes, we can make that conclusion. Okay. Angle 3 and angle 5 are congruent. Well, let me look at this and see. They're not formed by the same two lines. They do have this line here, but then this line is part of angle 3, but it stops, and angle 5 is here, so they're not vertical angles, and so I can't really tell that way, and there's nothing that's labeled on there that tells me that they're congruent. So the answer here is no, I cannot draw that conclusion because there is not enough information. Okay? Angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical angles. Okay, let's look at this and see. So this line, and they share that vertex, and they're across from each other. So yes, I can conclude that. And then even knowing that they're vertical angles, I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 because they're vertical angles. So that's even some more information. Even though it doesn't ask this, we can also say that angle 1 and angle 5, not only are they adjacent, but they're a linear pair because they create this line. So you can see there's a line here. So they're supplementary because they make that 180 degree line. Lines are always 180 degrees. And they share this side right here that forms the angles. So angle 1 and angle 5 are supplementary. So we would know they would equal 180 degrees when we add them together. Okay. So are angles 4 and 5. Okay, so there's a lot of just different things we can infer here. The only set of vertical angles here are angle 1 and angle 4. But so that's a lot of information though, just by looking at the relationships these angles have. So I know a lot about their measures if I'm given a little bit of information. And so I'm going to give us a little bit of information and say the measure of angle 1 is 40 degrees. Okay, well now just that one angle is going to be enough information to label all the rest of the angles, okay? So first we're going to say angle 1 and angle 5, okay? These two are supplementary, so this is going to be 140 because we need them to add up to 180. This is also going to be 40 because it is also supplementary or a linear pair with angle 5, okay? I'm going to tell you to label this so that 1 and 2 are the same. So we're going to say this is 40. Okay. And then the last thing is I see that 2, 3, and 4 are all supplementary. If we add them together, they're going to equal 180. So if these are both 40, then I know this one has to be 100 to make them supplementary. Okay, so we have found all the rest of the angle measures just based on one little bit of information and me telling you that angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Okay, but the really nice thing here is that the more vocab and the more properties and parts we know about angles, the more we can conclude and draw conclusions and figure out missing parts and pieces. All right, so that is all I have for you today. The guided notes are also in Google Classroom, so you can look at those if you missed anything or rewatch this video. Let me know if you have questions.